Hi Tanvi, hi Anshika. I'm just checking in with Himani where she is. Oh, there she is. Um, so, hello everyone, and welcome to Talking Tuesdays. We are here again with another guest. We are talking about a series that is about bonding pathways. These are directed at parents. We've talked about babies all along, but now we want to pay attention to how parents can bond with their babies and make it easy for them. We had picked up 5 pathways. We had talked about connecting, reading the cues and responding. We have talked about baby wearing. And today we're going to talk about sleep sharing. And for that, we have with us a guest, and we're going to invite her, and she will be here soon. Okay, as we wait for her, it's nice to see people coming back. Here she is. This is Himani. Hi, Himani. Welcome to Talking Tuesdays with My Child First. For all of you who don't know her, Himani Dalmia is a certified pediatric sleep expert. She's the leader of Lalesh League in India, one of the leaders, and a co-founder of Gentle Baby Sleep India, which is a Facebook support and information group that is 40,000 members strong. So welcome to Talking Tuesdays.
Great to be here, Divya, and great to chat with you again.
Yes, there are many times that we quote you. We still go back to our conversations. This is so helpful for all our subscribers, viewers, people who are on My Child First. So we were talking about bonding pathways, and one of the bonding pathways that we want to talk about is sleep sharing. And so I'm going to hand this over to you. So let's start with understanding what does sleep sharing mean and what are the different forms of sleep sharing.
Right. So, sleep sharing is basically the idea that a human infant, or actually even an older baby or a toddler, is very dependent on the parent and only sleep well attached to a parent. So it could be physically attached, or once they're a little older, it could be, just having their sleep needs met by their parent. And this idea, and it actually, since we're talking from the perspective of the parent at this point, it's a very natural way for a parent to practice what we call sleep parenting. So in our society, I think we have this belief that when the child goes to sleep, parenting ends there. And that is the time that we can attend to other things, which I suppose is an understandable approach. But it doesn't work that way. It's not the sort of biologically normal way of addressing this, because babies, when they fall asleep, they're actually equally, if not more, vulnerable, and they need their parents, and they need us to practice sleep parenting. We need to parent them when they're asleep as well. And this, goes back to the idea that human infants, are born very early in the gestation process. So the idea that, when we evolved with bipeds, the large head of the human baby could not fit through the narrow pelvis of a biped, and so had to be born very early. And how the theory says that human pregnancies would need to be 18 to 21 months long for a human baby to be born at the same stage of development as any other mammal babies. And therefore, when human babies are born, they're extremely dependent. And, for the first, they call it the fourth trimester, but I would say it goes beyond just a trimester. Human babies require an almost womb-like environment and that kind of care from their parent. So when one is attending to their sleep, it becomes much easier if one doesn't try to swim against the tide and, sort of meets their needs on this. So, if you sort of, so in the initial months, for example, your baby will very often wake up if she senses separation from you when she's asleep. So if you're holding your baby, if you breastfed your baby, or you've rocked your baby and your baby has gone to sleep, and then you try to put your baby down, even if you wait till your baby is in deep sleep, and then you try to put your baby down on a bed or a cot, very often the baby's eyes will just pop open, or even if your baby's in deep sleep, 10 minutes later, as soon as your baby cycles into light sleep, your baby will wake up. And then you're actually back to square one, right? So you don't have a well-rested baby. You've barely been able to, go to the bathroom, and and the baby's awake again. And you're actually back to square one, right? So was it worth it, right? Because you then have an overtired, underslept, cranky baby who is going to be clingier and who's not going to get the sleep that he or she needs. And as you know, sleep begets sleep. So the only way to have your babies and children sleep well is to ensure that they get enough sleep. It's only, for example, if they get enough daytime sleep that their nights are going to go well, right? So if you're going to have an overtired baby who's woken up because you put them down, it's counterproductive, right? So so I always advise parents to submit to this, to just accept it, to embrace the fact that you're going to do contact naps, so you're going to hold your baby while your baby is sleeping. Just hold your baby. You can baby wear. Some babies respond very well to it. Some babies may not respond so well to sleeping while baby wearing. So I've had two babies, and one of them slept in the carrier and one did not. The one who did not, a baby carrier was still very helpful, because then when she was awake, I could wear her at different time. But anyway, so you can baby wear, or you can hold your baby. Once they're a little older, you can put them next to you. They may not immediately jerk awake. You can put them next to you and stay close to them. And also, and this applies to the night as well. So at night, one usually doesn't need to hold the baby in your arms, because night sleep is a different quality from day sleep. So night sleep has much longer stretches of deep sleep, and also circadian rhythms, the day-night clock of the body, impose a huge sleep pressure on the body. So, day naps are not controlled by circadian rhythms. Day naps are controlled by homeostatic rhythms, which are sleep pressure. It's about how tired your body is, and how a baby's body can only be awake for a certain number of hours and then needs to sleep again. So during the day, it's just that day naps are sort of light sleep, mostly light sleep. And at night, a baby goes into very deep sleep, because it's a combination of homeostatic rhythms and circadian rhythms. And so it is possible to put your baby down. But at that point as well, if your baby is next to you, it's much easier. Your baby will wake less often. Your baby will experience less separation anxiety. Your baby will be much more secure, will smell you nearby, will feel you nearby, right? Will sense your presence. And also, if your baby wakes up, it's much easier to attend to your baby. And this actually connects with breastfeeding. So, I always say that, without wanting to create undue pressure, I feel that if one can breastfeed, one should. And if one can't, then one should seek help, and figure out a way, because sometimes it's a learned skill. It can require a little bit of support, and we should take that support. There is support available, there's a lot of support. So I feel that one should look to that support, turn to a Lale League leader, turn to online groups like Breastfeeding Support for Indian Mothers, come to people like yourself, or to lactation consultants, or, just seek that help, and try to make it a success, because it's an invaluable parenting tool, and it's an invaluable sleep tool as well. So if you have your baby next to you at night, and your baby wakes up, because babies do wake up at the end of sleep cycles, you can nurse them back to sleep, and it's a very easy thing to do. And there is an anthropologist by the name of Professor James McKenna, who has studied this very deeply, right? And he talks about, and I'd like to read out a quote by him actually, which talks about desire for an infant to be close to the mother, whether it's during a nap or at night, right? Um, Infants are biologically designed to sense that something dangerous has occurred, separation from the caregiver. They feel through their skin that something is different, such as missing the softness of mother's touch, the heat of mother's body, the smell of mother's milk, the gentleness of mother's moving, breathing chest, and the feeling of being protected. Infants are alerted because, as far as their own body is concerned, they are about to be abandoned. And it is therefore time to awaken, to call the caregiver back, the very caregiver on whose body the infant's survival depends. So that, in essence, sums up,
Yes, yes.
sleep sharing.
Yes, but here's the interesting thing. I was reading an article on attachment, and of course related to trauma. But here's the interesting thing that it says for most mammals, or no, not mammals, for most ground dwelling animals, when they feel danger, they run to hide. But primates and
Right.
higher mammals, including us, actually run towards the care provider.
Right.
So it
Right.
tells you something about how we are wired to actually reach a care provider rather than seek safety. And that tells us all about our dependence for everything, including safety, regulation on, and sleep becomes. And I remember you sent me those pictures, those wonderful pictures about how, this paradigm is not just for humans. So is this a good time to show those?
Yes. Great time.
So it says mammals bed share, and then of course we have, and let me open them up a little bit as well. So we have other mammals who are sharing, sleep sharing, and then we have, well, here's another one, which is a kitten, and then we have, oh dear, this is the cutest. Here's another one. And then there are a few other mammals as well who are closer to us. And then finally, the top of the pyramid mammal.
Yeah. That's the thing, right? It's so natural. It's the way mammals are intended to sleep. And human beings are the only species that try to put their baby away, and into a different sleep surface. And it's just, that's not how the baby is wired, So it is going to lead us into a sort of very complicated and destructive cycle of trying to manage that baby sleep.
Yeah.
Because we're just not adhering to what the biological norm is.
Yeah. Also, I think you sent us a video on Facebook from a zoo where this little chimpanzee is curling up with her baby and sleeping. It was really beautiful. I can't put it up here right now, but we'll put in the link in one of the comments later so that people can look at it. And I think one of the things that is a problem is this expectation of the baby managing their life by themselves. And perhaps if we can organize that a little bit, we might be able to answer the biological clock. But tell me now, just because it adds on to what you're saying, that if parents are looking at their babies and responding to their cues, what should be a realistic expectation of the baby's sleep cycles?
Right. Okay. So here it's really important to understand like a couple of sort of technical things about sleep, right? So I want to just talk about two or three things, which are actually quite fascinating and very interesting, and will help us understand how babies sleep, right? So the first thing to understand is that nobody sleeps through the night, right? Adults don't sleep through the night, right? You and I don't sleep through the night. So we all sleep in cycles. When we fall asleep, first we enter. So there are different stages of sleep within that cycle. When we fall asleep, we enter light sleep, then we enter shallow sleep, then deep sleep, deepest sleep, and then REM sleep. And then we cycle back through these stages. And this process takes about 2 hours, right? And then we as adults, we wake up at the end of a sleep cycle. So this will happen 4 or 5 times every night, right? 3 to 5 times every night. And we'll wake up. We won't even realize we're awake. We'll just pull up a blanket, or we'll cuddle our partner, or we'll take up a pillow, we'll roll over, and we'll go back to sleep. Now, babies also start sleeping in cycles. These adult-like cycles develop at the age of 4 months. And they start sleeping in cycles and they wake at the end of the cycle. At that age, the baby sleep cycle is about 40 minutes long, right? So very often parents will in fact say, my baby wakes up on the dot at 40 minutes. You can practically set your watch by it, right? And it's just such a finely tuned biological phenomenon. So babies will wake at the end of a sleep cycle and then they will need our help to put them back to sleep. They're not able to connect those sleep cycles. They're not able to bridge those sleep cycles. As they grow older, they develop that ability slowly. So, for example, once they're about 8 to 10 months old, they can connect about 30% of their sleep cycles, right? That still leaves a large chunk for us to put them with. Once they're about 2 years old, this can be 50 to 60%, right? And it's only once they're 3 or 3 plus that they can consistently connect those sleep cycles and therefore sleep through the night, right? And until then, they need our help. The easiest way to do this is to honestly breastfeed them. That's the easiest way because it's so natural. It's how nature intended it. The suckling motion just puts them to sleep. They get their nutrition from it, they get their warmth from it, they get security from it because there's health. Breast milk also contains melatonin, which is a sleep hormone. So that helps them go to sleep. So it's really this one-stop solution, this perfectly designed solution. And that it also generates sleepy hormones in the mother, so the mother can also sleep well. Most studies show that, mothers who are sharing and breastfeeding report continuous, very undisturbed sleep. But anyway, coming back to sleep cycles, they wake at the end of a sleep cycle and then they need our help to build back to sleep. So we need to be aware that, our baby is going to wake up 3 or 4 times at night, right? So on good night, it could be 2 to 3 times through certain phases like teething or regressions or separation anxiety or if they're transitioning to a lower number of naps or, if there's something going on, they might wake up more. On teething nights, they may wake up quite a lot more, so we need to be prepared for that. But yes, on average, babies wake up 3 or 4 times at night, and then we can sort of help them go back to sleep by nursing or bottle feeding or rocking or doing whatever their primary mode of feeding is, right? So this is the first concept to understand. The second concept to understand is overtiredness, right? So we're all led to believe, especially in the early stages, that we should keep our babies awake so that they sleep well. Nothing could be further from the truth, right? Our babies need to be well rested in order to sleep well. So we need to educate ourselves about how much sleep babies need at various stages. And it's not just night sleep. As I mentioned, day sleep has a different quality from night sleep. It also has a different function. So they need a certain number of day naps. And they, like neurologically, they can only stay awake for a certain period of time at different ages. So now, to understand overtiredness, think back to the time when we were in school or college and we stayed up all night to study for an exam, right? So when it's like 1 a.m., 2 a.m., we would start to feel tired, right? Maybe by 3 a.m., we would feel quite tired. But by the time it was 4 a.m. or 5 a.m., we would suddenly feel completely awake. We would get this shot of energy and we would just be like, okay, I'm awake and I've got, it's almost like a shot of caffeine. I'm completely up. I can go take my exam. And then finally, when we do fall asleep, it will be a sort of restless, fitful sleep. It won't be a very calm, restful sleep, right? Now, the same thing happens with babies. Let's say that a baby's optimum awake window, or the time that they can comfortably be awake, is 2 hours, right? So at 2 hours, our babies will start to show up early sleep cues. They'll start rubbing their eyes a little, rubbing their ears a little, just looking a little glazed, a little dazed, right? They may not be very interested in whatever we're showing them. Now, if we miss, this is the point at which we need to pick them up and put them to sleep, right? They'll fall asleep very easily. They'll drift off to sleep if we just rock them or nurse them or feed them or whatever it is that we're doing, right? If we miss this window, right? And if we miss the early sleep cues, and they're easy to miss, so it's very important to be sort of very aware. of the awake window and when you need to be watching for foods, etc. If we miss this awake window, then our babies enter what is called the second wind, right? Then they get that shot of energy, right? Because it's the body's survival mechanism. The body says, sleep is not coming, I need to survive, right? So the body fills with the stress hormone, cortisol. And that keeps our babies awake. It jerks them awake. They suddenly seem completely active, like they're not sleepy at all, right? And then if we try to put them to sleep, they will resist that sleep. They'll be very difficult to soothe to sleep. Soon they'll get cranky, and then when they do sleep, it won't be a restful sleep. Right? They'll wake up very quickly. They'll be cranky when they wake up. It'll be difficult to put back to sleep, right? So that is the cortisol in the body that is kind of disturbing their sleep and keeping them awake. So it's really important to avoid overtiredness. Now, so the way a baby's sleep pattern works is that the baby needs a certain number of day naps in the day, with the total and approximate number of time, and then a certain amount of night sleeps, right? So, and this changes. This changes almost every month. But like broadly, for example, a 6-month-old needs 3 naps that total about 4 hours of sleep. And then they need about 10.5 to 11 hours of sleep at night, right? Now, once they're 8-month-old, they shift to 2 naps, right? And the total of those 2 naps is about 3.5 hours. And then they follow the pattern that we call the 2-3-4 pattern, right? So it's very easy to remember. They take their first nap 2 hours after they wake up in the morning. That nap should be about an hour and a half or an hour and 45 minutes. Then they take their second nap 3 hours after they wake up from the first nap for about the same amount of time. And then bedtime is 4 hours after they wake up from the second nap. So that's why it's called the 2-3-4 pattern. And then they sleep about 11 hours at night, right? 10.5 to 11 hours again at night. Of course, there are phases when, they also need 12 hours of sleep at night. So, it's important to kind of educate ourselves about this. When should your baby be on 3 naps? When 2 naps? When does your baby transition to 1 nap, right? I mean, there might be a delta in this a little bit, but broadly speaking, it's a neurologically determined thing, and babies do transition around the same time. So it's kind of like a milestone, right? Like, okay, if a baby is walking at 13 months, then that's just the milestone that the baby is looking at, right? So around that time. However, in these sort of physical milestones, there can be a sort of a very wide range, and in these milestones, there isn't such a wide range. But yeah, so ensuring that our babies get age-appropriate day naps and enough night sleep goes a long way in helping them to sleep better because they're not overtired.
Yeah, and the minute you said the word cortisol, my kind of antenna went up because at first glance, cortisol is an activating agent, which means a short-term rush of cortisol. We do get an adrenaline rush on the circadian cycle in the morning that activates us and we can get through a daytime activity. But prolonged cortisol is actually detrimental to organ and genetic health. And then we look at a long-term effect of these babies who stay in cortisol, whether they are sleep deprived or they are managed, their sleep cycles are managed, because every time they push the window of their sleep, they have cortisol. Whether they are being trained or whether they are being put into a pattern or whether we are missing their cues or whatever we are doing. But there is cortisol, that's a response, but that has a long-term genetic and physical health. Adversity. So here is something to really consider, that parents start with the idea that this is good for the child, and then end up with all the things that might be detrimental, and so that's something really that always comes to me when we talk about cortisol, because we look at cortisol in a very fragmented way. It's a bad steroid in the body, it's a stress hormone, but it has its benefits appropriately incurred in the body. And so, kind of managing that. And there are one of the concerns that people have with a lot of literature coming from the West is about safety on sleep. And I think more and more people are afraid to have babies in their bed or share their beds because of safety. So we'd love to hear your views on that.
Yeah. So in fact, that's one of the reasons that bed sharing is sort of, not encouraged in the West, and then that trickles down to other cultures as well, right? This is not, so there are several medical organizations, in fact, as well, that advise against bed sharing. And when they suggest co-sleeping, they say, keep the baby in a cot in the same room, but don't bed share. But there are several organizations that also don't agree with this, right? And also several experts. So again, for example, Professor James McKenna has done a lot of research on this and has, published several articles and papers sort of arguing against this viewpoint. And so usually, organizations that support bed sharing say that you need to follow certain safety rules, and that's called the Safe Sleep 7. So as long as you follow those Safe Sleep 7 rules, a bed sharing is safe. So one rule is the mother should not be smoking, right? Both the parents, if they're bed sharing, they should. That's the second. So no tea or no alcohol. It's better if the mother is breastfeeding because of the way in which her body and her infant's body are in synchrony with each other, and the positioning that she naturally acquires with her baby, which is a very protective sort of positioning. And and also their sleep cycle synchronized, and the mother is very aware of the baby's breathing and the baby's body, right? It should be a healthy full-term baby. The baby should always be put on the back. The sixth is that the baby should not be swaddled, should not be overheated, should not be sweating. And the seventh is that the sleep surface should be safe. So no soft mattress, no extra bedding or extra pillows or loose bedding, no cords or wires or anything like that, no gap in the bed, right? So one way to do this would be to have bed rails. Another way would be to have a floor mattress. Another would be to push your bed against the wall, right? So, or the baby can be between the two parents. As the baby gets older, one can put a bed rail at the bottom. So there are ways to work it out and to make it safe. But yeah, if you follow the Safe Sleep 7 rules, then bed sharing is perfectly safe. And
Yep. I'm going to ask you to name them again because I think I lost connection for a moment. So I don't want to miss this. This is really important. So just kind of
okay.
count them down for
Okay.
me.
So let me do it this way, right? There's also a Safe Sleep 7 song, right? And you're supposed to sing it to the tune of Row, Row, Row Your Boat, right?
Okay.
So let me give that a shot, right? So it is: no smoke, sober mom, baby at your breast, healthy baby on his back, keep him lightly dressed, not too soft the bed, watch the cords and gaps, keep the covers off his head for your nights and naps. That's it. So those are the
that
7
was brilliant. That
yeah.
was brilliant. It deserves a clap, actually. That was brilliant. So I've always enjoyed talking to you, Mani, but let's just check with people who are viewing us if there's a question here that somebody wants to ask, because we've kind of covered a lot of ground quite simply. And I find that simple is always best. So if we have questions here, you're getting showered with a lot of love, which is definitely well deserved. If I could point at hearts and press them, I would do that too. But let's see if we have questions coming up. If you have questions, if you have anything, you can put it down in your comment section. Or you can also, if you have specific questions, you can join the Facebook group which Himani runs, and you can ask. We also know that you are doing individual consultations now, Mani, right. So you can get in touch with her in case you have very specific issues and you want to discuss sleep patterns. Maybe briefly touch on regression so that you use this word. And there was an interesting article that I read that said that as your baby is meeting a new milestone, some of their old skills are lost. So you'll find that it's interesting because there are many different research who talk about this in different ways, Mani. And it just struck me because it did say that when babies are learning to, getting ready to walk, they might lose their nighttime sleep. They wake up more frequently. Definitely. So just that. So we also have some questions coming, but just talk about regressions.
I'll just touch upon regressions, and maybe I'll take 1 or 2 questions because, as I mentioned, it's my toddler's nap time now. And I don't want for it all build up to happen, right? So, so regressions are basically periods of disturbed sleep, and they happen at sort of very predictable stages of a baby's growth. And although the term regression means that sleep regresses, so a baby who's been sleeping in a particular way may start sleeping, it may deteriorate a little bit, and there might be some disturbances. But in fact, it's a progression because your baby is progressing, right? There's a cognitive leap, there's physical development, right? Something is happening inside the baby, and the baby is actually progressing and developing, and that is what is causing the sleep disturbance. So, there's a regression and so then your baby might start waking up more at night. Sometimes they also want to practice their new skills at night, right? So they just want to practice them all the time, including at night, right? So they start waking up more at night. They might have active waking, which means that they're awake and they don't go back to sleep very easily. They're just awake and they want to play, right? They may start resisting their naps, or taking very short naps, resisting bedtime, waking up very early in the morning. So these are all the sort of features of a regression, and they happen usually commonly at 4 months, 8 to 10 months, 12 months, 15 months, and then 18 months and 24 months. But to be honest, that whole 18 to 24 month period is almost like one long regression, because they're sort of they're teething, they're developing, right? They're verbally developing at that age. They're talking, they're physically developing. They're walking, but they're starting to run and jump. They're developing cognitively. They're teething all the time. That whole separation anxiety is at its peak. So that period, that whole thing is like one long regression. But yeah, so these are the sort of commonly documented regressions. And I can see one question, but I take that.
How long should they co-sleep?
Okay.
It says, how long should they co-sleep?
Okay.
Till what time should they co-sleep with their parents?
Yeah. So I would say that it's best to be child-led about this and let the child decide when he or she wants to move out, right? So if, many of us like have slept with our parents till we were 8 or 9 years old, or beyond, and it was very normal. And now, I would say, if you really want to kind of be parent-led about it, I would say not before the age of 5. If you want to do it gently, it can be done before that, but there will be resistance, and your baby will come into your bed in the middle of the night. Even in the West, where there is, so much emphasis on a baby sleeping in a different room, toddlers come into their parents' bed at night, right? So they just open their doors and they'll come in, right? And sometimes the parents lead them back, and sometimes they don't, right? So it's very normal, because child needs the parent at night. So I would say that resistance would be a bit lower at the age of 5, although your child may still come into your bed. But if you want to be completely child-led about it, then just wait, I can guarantee you that your teacher is not going to be wanting to sleep in your bed. It will happen. And in fact, this time won't come back. There'll be a time when your child will not even want you around, right? So, so it can be, it can be pushed at the age of maybe even 4 at the earliest, or 5. It all depends on how child-led you want to be about it. Yeah.
So we're going to collect the questions, send them to you, and hopefully get the answers back to our viewers. Thank you so much for being here, Himani. It's always been a pleasure, and I always learn something.
Thank you so much, Divya. It's always been a pleasure for me as well. And I'm happy to respond. If you send me the questions, I'm happy to respond to them.
Yes, I know that. I know that.
Definitely. All right.
So thank you, everybody, for watching us on Talking Tuesdays. And next week, we will have the 5th pathway of breastfeeding, which is mothering through breastfeeding, for you. Until then, wish you all a very, very happy New Year.